Hey, it's All Caps Comics. You're listening to your host, Ethan Van Sciver, now a 25, going on 26-year veteran of the comic book industry. I started drawing comics back in 1993, where I realized that I wanted to tell stories for the rest of my life. Storytelling is what I do in everything. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love, absolutely love, YouTube and my two YouTube channels, because I can slowly let a story unwind, or I can find a topic and then turn it into a storytelling exercise. Yesterday I kind of screwed up a little bit. Fans were quick to point this out to me. My subscribers were like, Ethan, that was dark. I did 10 of the worst things that have happened on December 15th other than Star Wars The Last Jedi, and many of them were flippant and funny, like is it worse that the Spice Girls movie came out on the same date in 1997. But one of them was really, really dark, and it was the one that I wanted to tell the most because it was period true crime from like 1927, a kidnapping and murder story of a 12-year-old girl by a bank manager's disgruntled employee. And it was morbid and sad and awful and scary and weird. And I don't know why a movie hasn't been made about this story yet. People who watched it said that story was new to me. I won't be able to sleep tonight, but that was a new story to me. So I thoroughly enjoyed telling that story in about 4 minutes. I guess it's like 4 minutes long within this longer video. And fans said, oh my God, Ethan, that was way too dark for the subject matter. Yeah, you're probably correct, but I got caught up in it because I just love to tell stories, and that was a great story to tell. And similarly, I am caught up in telling the story of the SJW Star Wars fandom sex scandal. I think I'm on part 3 of that now. I'm working on part 4. I tell it dispassionately. I think where my prejudices may lie in this situation, but those are almost in the way of telling the story. When you actually have a perspective that you want to get across, a political agenda, it just seems poisonous to the actual telling of the story, especially when it seems clear that the story is already going to kind of serve that purpose. It's already going to if you tell the story well, most people who watch it are going to receive the lesson that you hope that they receive from it. Poisoning your audience with a political agenda is terrible. It's terrible for storytelling. It's part of what's going on with Comicsgate. It's part of what Comicsgate is rebelling against. We shouldn't allow this. We shouldn't allow people who are clearly embittered and embroiled and poisoned with politics to serve us up our fun nourishment. Is it nourishment? I was thinking, when I was a kid, 10, 11 years old, I'd sit down and I'd read Treasure Island. My mom made me read some Edgar Allan Poe. I didn't want to read any of this stuff, okay? But the funny thing was, when I was reading these great books that you really should read when you're a preteen, like Mark Twain stuff, at first you don't want to read it. I didn't want to read any of this stuff. It seemed like homework. But once I was reading, I couldn't put the books down. They were really, really good and thoughtful and fun, and they lit my imagination up in a new way. There weren't any pictures, obviously. Well, maybe a few. Maybe there were some nice illustrations. But when you're reading the Hobbit, you don't really need illustrations. Your mind does it for you. Now, what I preferred reading were comic books. And so when I was done reading what I needed to read, what I was being told I should read to stretch my brain, I naturally gravitated towards comic books with artwork by John Byrne and Todd McFarlane and all of the greats of my early teens. Didn't have to be instructed, didn't have to be pushed in that direction. I naturally went in that direction because comics were junk food. They were fun. And they were essentially candy. So that's what I chose to do. I never thought that I'm never going to be C.S. Lewis. But I could be Todd McFarlane. I could be John Byrne. I could be one of these guys. I could tell superhero stories for fun. And that's what I've chosen to do with my life. Having said that, last night was a great night. Had some drinks with Andrea, and we watched some old movies, and went to bed. It was a holiday night. I wanted to take the evening off and just spend time with family. And I did, and I enjoyed it. But when I woke up this morning, I found this incredible tweet that I wish I'd seen. Well, in a way, I'm glad I didn't see this when I was drunk. That would have been a mess. But I wish I had seen this sooner. This is an amazing tweet. You know, being part of Comicsgate is a reaction. It's a revolt against what's going on with social justice warriors and what they're doing to society. And it really does start in academia. It starts in college, but evidently the idiocy also extends backwards to high school at this point. These kids, our kids, aren't even getting a good free education because social justice warriors are teachers in high schools, and they are, I don't know what this fluff is. Let me read this tweet aloud. I'm sure you've already read it several times while I was talking, but look at this. Hi, Gail Simone, okay, who I've unblocked at this point. I blocked her back in 2016 after the election. She sicked her groupies Gail Cada on me. Those are her fans, and when she says something that she announces her displeasure, her fans will attack you. Initially, and by the way, after the 2016 election, everyone was crazy. Everyone was rabid. I was celebrating, and I was absolutely inundated with loonies who were calling me names and threatening me and all this crazy stuff. And I blocked Gail Simone. I thought that was, for somebody who said that she was my friend, I thought that was a really unkind thing for her to knowingly do. I would never have done that to her. And so I thought that was odd. Well, I blocked her all these years, and then I decided to unblock her when I heard her say, secondhand, that the rape allegations against Eric Esquivel shouldn't be spoken about with people who are Comicsgate. In essence, she said that Pia Guerra was arguing with Comicsgaters, various people who align with Comicsgate, some who don't, I'm sure, about the situation. And Gail just pops in and says, by the way, Pia, they're Comicsgate. So in other words, don't argue about this very, very vital, important issue, something that they should be very concerned with people who you disagree with. And isn't that a comfortable situation to find yourself, where you can just say, you can feel morally just in saying, don't argue about my own hypocrisy with people who naturally I disagree with anyway. That would be good. And nobody would get to call you out except for people who you could genuinely or gently massage back into understanding and compliance. Now, I saw this and I unblocked Gail Simone because it's just, first of all, it's time to unblock somebody like Gail Simone. I should be kind of keeping an eye on what she says when what she says is about is basically toxic to my belief system. It's hostile to the things that I believe. It's hostile to my friends. So I'm going to keep an eye. I'll keep an eye. I'll comment unless she blocks me, which would be her choice. Gail reacted by telling me to grow up, which is an interesting thing. I will never grow up. I never will. Sorry. I will always be, 13 years old when it comes to my imagination and when it comes to toys and collecting things. And that's just the way that I think that's the way that I'm best served as a storyteller. Now, I am not a high school educator. I'm a guy who draws frogs. This guy is a high school educator. This guy is teaching your kids. Unavoidably, if you live in his district, your kids are going to his school, and it's likely they are receiving he teaches English in high school. They're receiving lessons from this gentleman. Now, Gail told me to grow up, which is fair criticism, even though, no, I'm not going to grow up. He says, hi, Gail. I'm a high school English teacher who teaches graphic novels. What people like Ethan Van Sciver and #Comicsgate idiots, what people like Ethan Van Sciver and Comicsgate idiots, okay, don't understand is that there are a lot of great comics creators I teach. Okay, I could stop right there, but I'll keep going. I can avoid creators who aren't decent people. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have 20-something-year-olds, or even just high school graduates that don't go on to college, and I don't recommend that you necessarily go to college. I think college is, for some people, it's a waste of time and money. For other people, it's, unless you're going for a specific purpose to be educated so that you can follow a direction that's going to lead to a happy and prosperous life. If you're just there to sit in some lesbian dance theory class, it's a waste of your time and your parents' money. Having said that, high school is absolutely necessary, and graduating with a high school diploma, if that's all you're going to have, and by the way, that's all I have. I could not afford to go to college. I have 8 brothers and sisters and a family that was deeply, deeply impoverished. So the minute I graduated high school, I had everything that I needed. I knew the direction that I wanted to go in with my life. It didn't really require further education. Didn't require it. It could have used it. I still feel like I'd love to go to college and maybe go to film school or something. I'd love further education, but it's not necessary. Hopefully, my public school education in New Jersey gave me everything that I need to survive as an adult. Okay, all the education that was necessary. This gentleman is teaching your children from comic books. He's teaching your kids from comic books. Now, I don't want to denigrate the medium. I believe comic books are valuable. I believe they're a valid form of expression, and there are some things to be learned, I guess, from comic books. I don't know what they are, but there are, I guess. See, I know all these people. I wouldn't let most of these people around my children, much less. Okay. Having said that, not only is this gentleman teaching your kids from comic books, he's not exposing your child to Edgar Allan Poe, or C.S. Lewis or Jack London or any of these great authors. You're not reading The Hunchback of Notre Dame. You're not reading any of these classic books that you should be reading. War and Peace in high school. These are all books that you really do need to have read and be forced to read, because you're never going to read them. In all likelihood, you're never going to read them as an adult. So you need to read them in high school. He wants you to read Watchmen. He wants you to read Watchmen, and that's where we have descended at this point. Those are the standards that we've fallen to. Why? Why does he want you to read Watchmen? Because he reads Watchmen. Because he's a big comic book fan, and I think as an adult comic book fan, you might be incredibly insecure unless you validate yourself on a daily basis using your job as an educator to suggest and imply that reading comic books should take the place of reading, actual books. And the fact is that no, not really, not in school. Okay, maybe as an elective course in college, perhaps, but not in school. Now, on top of that, not only is he teaching your kids comic books, he's using a selective bias to keep comic book creators who he considers to be not decent people. That would be me. I'm indecent. He wants to avoid indecent exposure to your kids, in this way at least. He wants to keep them from reading Green Lantern Rebirth or Sinestro Corps War or Flash Rebirth or any of these books that really I just kind of drew. So this gentleman thinks he is punishing me. He believes he is punishing me by telling me that he is not going to use my books to educate the poor Canadian kids. I believe this guy's Canadian, that he is tasked and paid to educate every day. Sir, are you really threatening to educate teenagers, educate in quotes, using Gail Simone comic books? Is that what this is? Do parents know? Does the community know? Does the faculty know that you are skipping the Iliad in favor of Gail Simone's... What did Gail Simone write? Oh my God. What's something good that Gail wrote? Hold on. Uh, I want to say Sinister Six, but that's Marvel. What's the thing that she wrote? I don't know. Who cares? Anything, Gail. Are you seriously are you threatening to not listen? I'm stammering as I try to form the words here, because I'm a parent. I'm not just a comic book artist. I'm a parent of a kid who is still a teenager, and I have a daughter who is about to become a teenager, and then I have a very, very young daughter. She's 2.5, who will eventually become a teenager, and I will still be here to guide her through her teenage years and her education. Sir, are you going to sir? Do not do this. Do not teach your kids from comic books. Don't do it. I know it might make you feel good because, look, people who read comic books still, many of them, I suppose, and on some level, feel a little embarrassed that they still read, what's considered to be juvenile material. And so we go through this whole thing. We went through this whole thing in the 90s where no, graphic novels are literature for adults, etc., etc. Yeah, it's kind of true, but it's still fun. It's still fun. It's like going to film school and then watching King Kong Skull Island. It's not. It isn't going to teach you much because it's sort of precedented and based on all of the great stuff that came before. If you're going to film school, you shouldn't be watching Dumb and Dumber. You should probably be watching Citizen Kane. Point of fact, you should if you're in literature school, if you're in literature class in high school, your high school literature class should be discussing the great works of storytelling upon which everything else in comics is based and founded. Shakespeare. Everything is based on Shakespeare stories. Everything that Gail Simone does, everything that I do, are subjective political ethics or morality that you are choosing to judge, have very little to do with the nourishment qualities of the work that we're producing. In point of fact, there is zero. Okay? There's zero. There's nothing to be gleaned from an education standpoint from anything Gail Simone has ever said or done or created. Nothing. Not a thing. Oh, by the way, nor I. Well, no. Nor I. None of the comics that I've created have been meant to do anything except amuse you. They're not to be raising teenagers on in place of an education where they could be learning Shakespeare. This is absolutely astonishing. And then we wonder why kids get out into the workplace, and by kids I mean 20-somethings, get out there in the workplace and there's no job for them and they're crippled by debt. They're utterly crippled by debt for their loans, for their student loans that they cannot repay because they spent time in these kind of bogus glamour courses taught by dummies like this, who have decided for the sake of their own vanity to teach their kids, to teach these students things that are fun and have absolutely no value in the real world. Comic books are meant for fun. I demand that you do not waste the time of your students, your literature students, teaching them about Batman, Catwoman, Trail of the Gun. I demand. I'd be furious if I were a parent. I'd be furious if I were one of your fellow teachers. I would be absolutely furious if I were the school board. I'd be furious if I were the PTA. I'd be furious if I were the mayor of your town. It's inappropriate. Don't teach them my comics. Definitely do not teach them Gail Simone comics. And again, how about worrying more about teaching kids about the world as it is and letting them make up their own minds rather than you and your very, very strange views about who are decent people and who are not decent people. Look in the mirror. You're teaching high school students comic books when they should be learning about Shakespeare. You're not a decent person.
Hey, want to follow me on Twitter? Okay, cool. I'm at Ethan Van Sciver. Talk to you there.
Show your friends you support independent comics while showing the world who you back in the fight against the swarm with the brand new Cyberfrog t-shirt from Crypto Fashion and Comic Artist Pro Secret. Sizes come in small to 5XL, and take your choice of colors between navy blue, white, and black. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and order the Fandom Menace, Go Get Daddy's Belt, Tico, and Soilo t-shirts as well. Link is below in the description. You're going to look great. People love these shirts. They fit wonderfully. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video and want to become part of this community, subscribe to this channel by clicking the Laughing Man face logo right on your screen. Ring the bell for notifications as well. You'll never miss a live chat. And stay tuned, another video by Comic Artist Pro Secrets is coming right up.